Folks, I'm going to talk to you about a notice of disconnection and then get into the latest home prices and insights for the Peel and Durham region for week ending October 8th, 2025. If you want to speak directly with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. Below this video in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Not long ago, we were with our buyer clients looking at homes, and we went into this one property and we couldn't get the lights to switch on. As we walk in, we're turning on lights. Now, the home was vacant, and as it was during the daytime, so we could still see. I mean, if it was nighttime, it would have been a problem that we couldn't get any of the lights to turn on. But it was daytime. We're walking through, and as we get into the kitchen, there's a letter that's kind of folded, but you could see the letter. The heading was Notice of Disconnection. So turns out the electricity, I'm assuming, was cut off at this place. And we're looking through the house, and there's some interest from my clients. But my clients are seeing this notice of disconnection. There's some other parts of the home that made you kind of think the sellers are in a financial bind. Those are the thoughts that go to your mind, specifically with the notice of disconnection. But there were some other things that made you wonder what's going on here. The sellers must be in financial trouble. Now, the home was listed a little bit higher than similar properties in the neighborhood, so it was already high to begin with. But when you looked at recent sales, price should be even lower than what the other homes were listed for that were listed for lower. So price was way off. My client, the buyer, was interested in that property though, especially thinking maybe they can get the price that they need that made sense for the area. And so I called the listing agent and I said, listen, we not too long ago were through the house. There was no power, and I saw the notice of disconnection on the kitchen table. He said, yeah, another agent had alerted him to that, and he's spoken with the sellers, and hopefully the sellers are going to take care of this shortly. Okay. I said, so what's going on? The home is vacant, power's been cut off. Like what's going on here? And he says, well, the sellers have moved out, they're living with family, and they need to sell this home. I said, okay, well, there's some interest from my client, but the price that you're at really isn't making a lot of sense. And I told him, I mean, you could see on MLS, there's other properties similar listed for lower. Plus, when you look at the sales, the price should be even lower than that. And the home has been on the market for a little while also, so I should inform you about that. Well, the agent says, Santo, let me be frank. If you're thinking of putting an offer, it basically has to be at what we're listed at, or the seller just cannot afford to close. I'm being very clear. We have to basically get the list price, or the seller just can't accept the offer no matter what, because he won't be able to close. So there are a bunch of sellers in this situation right now. And for whatever reason, they're in this financial situation where their home value has changed from when they purchased, and it's eaten up whatever equity they had. And the equity was basically the down payment when they originally bought the home. Well, values have changed more than what they've put into the home. And now to close, they'll have to come up with personal money, because the money coming in for the purchase won't cover paying off the mortgage. Just to put it simply, there's not enough money on the sale that covers the mortgage, so the sellers will have to put in more. And some sellers just don't have that. Some sellers are struggling to pay their bills, as in the case with the power being shut off at this house. I guess my advice is, look, things are going to happen, and I'm not trying to downplay this at all. But early on in the process, when you start to see these or start to feel, if you're a homeowner, you start to feel these financial pressures. If you look down the road and there's no real solution, like if you're thinking of the market's going to turn around, the market's going to turn around, you got to have a more long-term picture there. The market's not going to turn around in a matter of 1 or 2 or 3 months like this, where miraculously all your problems are solved. Early on in the process, you may have some options to deal with your financial situation. Selling is maybe the answer, maybe not. I don't know. But what I'm getting at is, if early on in the process, when you look down the line and you can see the writing's on the wall that you're headed into a path that is just going to handcuff you with no choices, early on you may have some choices. That's when you really seriously need to react. Because if you wait too long down the line, whatever choices you may have had, maybe might not be available to you anymore. And where you had options, now choices will be made for you. At some point, if that home doesn't get sold at the price the seller needs, for example, the bank's going to take over that. And it doesn't matter what the seller, tries to do or not do, the bank's going to take over, or whoever has the mortgage on that home is going to take it over. Choices will be made for you. And when choices are made for you, it's way more expensive than you early on in a process making some choices there. Act early, you're better off. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. And if you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. We're focused on the detached market. We've got data for Mississauga, Brampton, and Durham region. For Durham, I'm using Pickering, Ajax, and Whitby, and we're only talking about the detached market here. These are average sold prices for 3 months. We're going to start off with Mississauga for week ending October the 8th. 42 detached properties were sold. 4 of those sold at $2 million or more. Let's look at sales for a second. So if we just look at the fall market, we've seen sales of 44, 47, then we dropped to 31. Now we're back up to 42. I'm going to summarize that as saying sales really haven't changed that much. They're pretty steady in the low 40s is what I'm going to say here. Average sold price, to me, looks like it's been trending down over the fall market. It's currently sitting at $1,330,000. 1,330 is 2% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $1,220,000 is 8% lower than the same week a year ago. Now the dotted line, that's a 4-week moving average. And when we look at average price, that dotted line is trending down. When we look at median price, that dotted line is a bit more flat. And we're seeing this in some of the other areas also, where median price is a different trend than average price. 42 were sold. 7 of those, so 17%, sold at list price or more. 143 were listed. Active listings, it's climbing slightly. We're sitting now at 995 available for sale detached properties across Mississauga. What we're basically saying is that of all the properties available for sale, 4% actually sold. Months of inventory, it's 5.5 months of inventory, just the other side of a balanced market into a buyer's market. Here's Brampton. Also, sales, not a big change, maybe even slightly trending upwards. 54 detached properties were sold 1 of those sold at $2 million or more. Average sold price prior to the fall market, so spring and summer, average price, we can go back to the beginning of the year, average price overall trending down, but for the fall market, average price has been shooting up. We're now at 1 million, excuse me, 1,137,000. 1,137 is 1% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $1,039,000 is 7% lower than the same week a year ago. 54 were sold, 11 of those, so 20%, sold at list price or more. 1,265 are available for sale, currently on the market right now. 4.3% of those actually sold during week ending October the 8th. And months of inventory, we're sitting at 5.4 months of inventory. Here's Durham. And I said, we're focused on Pickering, Ajax, and Whitby as my Durham sample. And again, detached properties only. For week ending October the 8th, sales came, it's the lowest we've had the whole fall. Every week so far for the fall market since September, we've been over 40, between 40 and 48 sales every week. October 8th, week ending October 8th, 29 detached properties sold. Average sold price is $1,021,000. If we get rid of the low week, the average price, and the high week of average price, looks like average price for Durham region, for the 3 cities we're talking about, is trending down. Compared to last year, $1,021,000 is 11% lower. The median price of $980 is 13% lower. 29 were sold, 8 of those, so 28%, sold at list price or more. Listings trending down. Active listings, not a lot of change since the beginning of September. There's 683 available for sale. 4.3% actually sold. And months of inventory sitting at 5.4 months of inventory. Here's a quick summary. It's pretty even. Mississauga, 5.5 months of inventory. Brampton, 5.4. Ajax, Pickering, and Whitby, 5.4. Condos were at 7.3, but that's a whole other show, a whole other market. But man, we're right just the other side of a balanced market. So we're just north of 5 months of inventory. You're going to experience a buyer's market, but not so aggressive buyer's market. You're going to experience a balanced market. There'll be some situation, some more rare opportunities where it's going to be very competitive for those few properties. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.